Professor, as a faculty member, can you describe the general School of Engineering culture and what are some new visions that the engineering school is trying to bring to students?
The culture of School of Engineering, I think two things. One is because we are a research university, so faculties tends to look at innovation, creation process as their primary task. So I think this is actually creating some kind of impact to the curriculum as well. We are actually working very hard, try to get students to know the process of invention, the process of innovation, which is becoming something very important nowadays. I think that like one of our vision is that by the time students graduate from the university in the future, there must be a question that they have to answer. Is that why I have to hire you but not a computer? Because computers are becoming more and more powerful. AI, machine learning, deep learning, this is actually changing our perception about what computer cannot do. Indeed, they are a lot more powerful than we initially believe what computer can do. So now, when we talk about the curriculum, when we talk about what students need to have, is the ability to say, I'm not a computer. I can do something better than computer. What these are, from our perspective, these are like creativity, decision-making, caring, trust. These are the main things that computer probably is still not doing as good as human being. So instead of asking students to remember textbook knowledge and recite it in a final examination, I think we are moving towards a more experiential learning approach to get students to have more time to challenge themselves, more time to work together as a team.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Mary? As a student of the School of Engineering, how do you feel? And I know that you were an STA in the UCell lab. How was that experience for you?
I think engineering students are very self-motivated. They have fun with what they're doing. And you can really see that in the UCell lab because all the projects there are student-initiated. And when I worked there as a STA, I would just come behind them and be like, so what's that? And then they can explain like really well. And those are things that like you can tell they probably like took time of their own time and then to learn about it rather than something that you can learn from a lecture. Or it's something that they apply, some kind of knowledge they applied that they learned from the lecture. So like it's really amazing to see like the things they do and like not just like what UST like teaches us, but what they provide for us, like the resources that we have. So it's like really, really motivating to be around them all the time because there's always something to learn.
That is so great. Now, actually, I want to move on to the Q&A part. Professor, our students have asked you a couple questions, and now we want to ask them to you. The first question is, how can engineering students improve their creativity? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, interesting. I actually teach creativity for quite some time. It's not a hot topic in the past, but now becoming something very important. A few key points that I tend to tell students. First of all, you need to like daydreaming. If you don't do that, then it limits your creativity because incubation process is something that you combine things, not like your common sense is the main obstacle of creativity because people always judge things based on their common sense. So the first step to get more creative is to throw away your common sense by daydreaming, feeling sleepy. When you're not conscious enough, then you start to throw in your creativity. So that's one thing. I'm not saying that you need to daydream in a lecture, but that actually helps. The other things that I ask students to do is to follow some kind of training because creativity is an inborn ability, I would say. Everybody born to be creative to start with. It's just that your teachers or your common sense starts to tell your body not to do something risky, not to do something creative. So you need to get to a a practice. There are many different ways, different training that you can participate in. But one thing that you need to know is something that you can learn. But it's not a lot of students. And now I'm not creative, so let me just get away from those creative works. Let somebody who are creative to do it. But to trust yourself, to tell yourself that, yes, I can be very creative. I can do this.
Mm-hmm. And that was great, by the way. And the second question is going to come from Mary.
So my question is, as a professor, what was the most memorable question that a student has asked you?
This is interesting. Lots of interesting questions that I encountered in the past, including this one. Let me say it this way. It's not my story, but it's a story that I witnessed from my supervisor in my PhD study. So this story was I was in a lecture and my supervisor by that time was giving a lecture. So in that lecture, one student sitting in the front row fell asleep. So he fell asleep in the lecture while my supervisor was still talking about the technical content. And then he fell in such a deep sleep that he started to have this slurring sound coming out. And everybody started to realize that that student was asleep. And then my supervisor tried to tell the guy sitting next to the one who fell asleep and tried to say, okay, wake him up. Like kind of using some kind of gesture to notify that person who is awake to wake up the guy next to it. And then the following question, no, I don't want to do it. And then he said, why? Just wake him up. And then he said, no, you put him to sleep. You wake him up. So that's the question coming back. And then my supervisor was, oh, that's true. so my professor walked all the way down to the front row and wake up that person. So that's probably the most memorable questions from student that I encountered so far.
Okay, and the last question is, what is the best thing about HKUST School of Engineering from your perspective?
So I would say that it's not advertisement, but I would say that School of Engineering in HKUST is just great, absolutely brilliant. The reason is we are willing to change. I mean, I know people working in some other university, some traditional like top university around the world. We are also top university. But one thing that they encounter a lot is that even though they know perfectly what students need when they graduate from the university, they know exactly what the engineering field is looking for, like teamwork, design thinking, creativity. But there's no way that they can change their curriculum because it's associated with so many procedures, so many things, advantages, teaching load, and funding, everything combined together, and make it extremely difficult to change. Even a minor change is almost impossible. But HKUST is like a totally different world. We create like the cornerstone course, the USU lab. These are things that, like probably in some other university, it takes 10 years to process. But we do it in, let's say, okay, we want to create a lab. We think that it's important to have such kind of thing that will nurture students' creativity. And then the next day, yes, here's the money. Go ahead and do it. I think that's the kind of culture. That's the kind of structure. Because we are still young when compared to some other university, our structure is still not, everybody understands that our system is not perfect, and we are always happy to change it to make it even better. So I think that's the good thing about HKUST that most other universities cannot have.
I mean, I'm not an engineering student, but even I agree as far as I see from outside. So thank you so much for your answers and for joining our Zoom talk. We're slowly ending, and I want to say a big thank you to Mary for joining us as well. It was so great to hear your stories and hear your answers to our questions. Thank you for watching us, and see you in another episode.